Hey everybody, it's Brian. I just wanted to get on here for just a little bit after the special. I hope that we did a good job, updating everyone on the case and paying tribute to the victims. And I hope, and their families, because I just feel so bad for them, and I wanted to do a respectable, good job with it tonight. So I hope that I I hope it all worked out okay. I'm just waiting for Paige, the producer, to get in here, and then we will get started. One second. Sorry. You think I know how to do the spaces by now, better, but I'm still. I see Paige in here, but let's see if I can. Paige, can you hear me? Can you unmute? I sent you an invite, Paige, if you hear me. Sorry, guys. One second. We're just trying to figure this out. I think we're both just exhausted too. I think you just have to unmute Paige. All right. I just accepted you.
Now?
There we go.
Ah,
Yeah.
there we are. Look
It's
at us.
almost like the little audio issue we had in the show. We had another audio issue.
Oh my gosh, you would think that we would know how to do this by now.
Um so thank you guys for joining. Thank you guys for those of you who watched the special. We had the new information off the top, and we talked about it throughout, basically, that Kaylee's injuries were significantly more brutal than Maddie's, that they were in the same room together, up on the third floor, which is really interesting to think about, that the killer, you know, went up to the third floor, because there's a balcony up there. There's a slider, but there's no access to the ground. So if you were the killer, I mean, there's not an easy way to leave from the third floor. You'd have to go back down to the second floor, which is why some people are thinking, could that indicate that, that Kaylee was targeted up on the third floor? I mean, what do you make of it, Paige?
Yeah, I think it's something a lot of us have been wondering about who and which floor and what path the killer may have taken. But I think learning that they were in Maddie's room, right? We've looked at those floor plans. It's the one away from the balcony. It makes you wonder, we heard the father, Steve, Kaylee's dad, say before, he didn't have to go up there. A lot of people wondering what that meant. I think maybe this gives us a little bit more clarity.
Yeah, I felt like hopefully the victims' stories really came through in the piece. just, trying to enjoy their college experience, just really, really good young people, it seemed like. And um, that to me, the victim's story that we did, I just felt like that really brought the whole thing, just made it more real. Because we've talked about this, it's so easy to get wrapped up in the investigation, but these were real people with real families that are really like hurting right now.
Right. And what we really tried to do was dive in and see what we could learn about them and their personalities and the little things that they liked and the little quirks that we all have, to really try to personalize them. Um, because that's how you understand why their families are fighting so hard for them and why they should be. We talk about it before, but you see yourself in some of them and your past experiences. So that was something that I'm really hoping that we did a job well done on, was making sure that people really felt compelled and learned about the victims and just sort of related to these families.
Yeah. And by the way, everybody listening, if you guys want to ask a question, like Spaces just looks different to me. You can why don't I usually, I used to see all the little icons, but I don't see them now. But you can just comment. Like, I posted the Spaces on my Twitter, where it says join me in my space. You can just where it says join me in my space. You can just like comment under there with your question, and I'll keep refreshing it to see question, and I'll keep refreshing it to see. um, what you guys have to say. So let me see here if there's anything. Could Kaylee's wounds be more severe because she fought back harder, or was trying to protect Maddie, and not necessarily that she was targeted? I mean, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that before, Paige.
Yeah.
Maybe she was trying to defend Maddie. I mean, they were best friends forever. That wouldn't be surprising at all.
Right. It kind of gives you like chills thinking about it, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, it really does.
I think
Um,
once we still are waiting. We've heard that some of the victims have had the defensive wounds, and we don't necessarily know for sure who is what, but obviously that would shed a lot of insight into what happened in that house too.
Someone else is saying, didn't we always know that the perpetrator went to the third floor? Yes, we did know that.
Mm-hmm.
We knew that, yeah, because from the beat for a while, police have been saying that the victims were on the second and third floor, not the first floor. But what we didn't know until tonight was that Kaylee's injuries were more severe. So that's sort of the new element, and that they were in Maddie's bed.
Yeah, and a couple people asking for the clarity of if Kaylee's wounds were worse than everyone or just Maddie. And from what we know, the information was the comparison to Maddie.
Yeah. Some of you are telling me about like some police activity on campus, so we'll check that out too. I mean, it's likely, probably, I don't know, probably not related, but we'll look into it. There's a lot of comments about that. Um, I'm just reading more comments here. Where are the surviving roommates? We don't know. I mean, according to police, they've been cleared.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't know exactly where they were. A lot of people have been asking me if they were at the vigil. There was a story earlier. Did you happen to catch it, Paige? They released a statement through, I think, a pastor. Have you seen
Yep.
that?
Yep, that's right. They did at one of the celebrations of life. They spoke about their four roommates, obviously, in these pretty touching tributes. So that was the first time that we've really heard something from them about what happened. You know, you can imagine a lot going on for them too, as surviving this incident and everything that comes along with that. But yes, we did hear from them. They had just really touching things to say about them. You know, uh, the Ethan and Xana, the perfect duo. They were fun and passionate and good energy. And Kaylee's described as a second mom to some of them. So just really, really touching things from them for the first time.
Someone's asking, has any more info on Jack from the food truck came about? Has his alibi been confirmed or has he been checked back into? Have you seen the footage? Um, so yes, I've seen the footage. In terms of the alibis, so we don't know the specific alibis of the people who've been cleared. That is something that Kaylee's family is frustrated by. They feel that they should be given that information. If someone's cleared, they want to know what the alibi is. Of course, like a ton of law enforcement experts have spoken and said, you know, just because you're on the cleared list doesn't mean that someone's always going to be cleared. So you know, we don't really know how that's going to play out. Let's see.
Right. Brian, I thought one of the interesting parts from your sit down with Kaylee's family was when the dad was talking a lot about the family itself doesn't like the whole connotation, the whole idea that comes with this being targeted. Do you want to talk about that more, or at least being labeled targeted?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's just been so confusing for since the beginning. Like, no one really knows what that means, including the families. Who was targeted? Was the house targeted? The story from police has changed a couple of times. It was interesting. Kaylee's dad doesn't like that term because it makes it sound like the girls did something wrong to be targeted, whereas, you know, they likely didn't. They were just like going out and then coming home. Like basically anyone could be targeted.
Right.
And then also like it was interesting, he kind of referenced that like it almost also pins the families against each other. Like, you know, it's like, oh, well, your daughter was the one who was targeted. So, you know, it just it just makes him uneasy, which I mean no one I still don't understand exactly what that means or
Mm-hmm.
like you know and I think her family thinks that it was a way to sort of keep people calm here and not use the word random just because this is a college town and you know you don't want to freak people out. But yeah, it's really confusing.
And they also sort of cleared up or at least shared their insight into allegations of a stalker.
Yes, that's a good yeah, that's a good one. In terms of a new nugget. There was this confusion about whether she had a stalker. Initially, there were reports that the family thought she did. Police said there was no evidence. Her family told me that there was not a stalker that they know of. There was no specific stalker that they know of. Uh,
Right.
so let me look through these. There's a lot more here. I'm seeing this is from Lexi. I'm seeing people saying there's phone records of Kaylee texting somebody that she heard a noise downstairs that night. Do you anything about that? That's a good question. And her family talked a lot about this. Apparently, Kaylee was kind of like a nervous Nelly. Like, you know, she would call her sister frequently and be like, "Oh, I heard a noise outside, or I heard a tapping on the window," and that was like totally common for her to do. And they'd be like, calm down, there's probably no one out there. Like that happened a lot of the time. So they said like it wouldn't be unusual for her to like be freaked out about things. Um, let's see what else is on here. I'm just looking at the.
Oh, let's talk about police activity because there really wasn't anything going on today. And not during the special, right?
No,
You
it's
did
been
talk
quiet out
about,
there.
yeah, you talked about private security now outside the house, but if you joined us yesterday during Spaces, there was activity.
Yeah, so today it's been quiet. I think that maybe because there's so few Moscow police, they don't want to have an officer sitting there all the time. So they've hired like a private security company. So there's like a security guard outside the house now. Not you may have noticed in a lot of the videos, it's not Moscow police. Um, but yeah, no activity today. Yesterday was interesting though. Late at night when we were out there just kind of watching, the detective showed up and then left with the big brown bags. So we still don't know what that was. Like what
Right,
was
but the
thing?
interesting thing about that was that it was the first floor.
Yeah. Yeah, they were kind of zeroing in on the first floor bedroom on the left side if you're looking at the house. They had the light on in there and they were um like just really focused on that. So, another question from Lisa, do the families have victim advocates assigned to them? I know FBI has them, not sure about Idaho authorities. I certainly hope so because
Mhm.
I just feel so bad for them and being at Kaylee's house. I will say there was a lot of family there, a lot of extended family. I mean, they clearly have a very good support system. And they're like a really close family. So that was nice to see. I think they really have each other right now. But this was so heartbreaking. Her dad was telling me like just how unimaginable this is. He was saying, you know, not only did we lose Kaylee, he's like, if something had ever happened to Kaylee, he was like, Maddie would be sitting on this couch right now with us, comfortable.
Mhm.
And so he said, it's like unimaginable to them to have lost Kaylee and Maddie. Like it's just they can't process it because Maddie was like another daughter. Maddie would have been the one to tell them that it was going to be okay. You know.
Right.
So, I'm just looking here. Are Kaylee's wounds more severe than the two on the second floor? We don't know that, and I want to make that clear. What I've learned is that her wounds were more severe than Maddie's. But I don't know how that compares to the victims on the second floor. I don't know the answer to that. Um, let's just going through here. So I think it was someone close to the girls. We really don't know. I mean, do you have a take on that page?
We don't, but Xana's mom definitely does. She told Ashley Banfield she thinks that it's someone close to them, even closer than a suggested potential stalker. Something like that. She thinks that it's someone that the four of them trusted, specifically the girls. I don't know. I mean, this is what's confounding about this to so many people, right? The no signs of forced entry, um, the timing of how this all happened, the fact that there's nobody yet on a radar that we're aware of from police. I don't know. I just think that that's one of the things that's really, really hard to put your finger on what it might be.
A lot of you messaging me about police activity. I think someone must have posted something online. So we'll go check it out in a minute here. I'll go drive over there.
Yeah, everyone, and
But
we've
you have
talked
to
about
remember,
this.
yeah, it's like everybody freaks. Hopefully, it's probably nothing, but we'll go drive by.
Yeah, we've talked about this on News Nation, right? And it's this whole thing, and it's the whole reason why we wanted to go and stay in Moscow. Is like you're looking at this small town that's just spooked, right? There's no better word. It's just they're on edge. They hear something, you can't blame them. I would too. But we've seen it in terms of the police reports that are up, and some of them are for suspicious circumstances, and you hear things like snow prints in the back behind the patio. You hear something like they saw a man outside the house, and
Right.
you have to wonder how much of this is fueled by what's happened.
Yeah, you went over all those police reports that day from
Yeah.
So you saw, I mean, like, people are freaked out. There's a lot, like, the number of reports from people reporting unusual activity, it, like, I think more than, like, doubled.
Yeah. Yeah, it's up quite a bit. And so are welfare checks, because people are like worried about their loved ones, right? All of a sudden they don't answer the phone for a second, and you're worried, God forbid something terrible happened to them. That's just why, you think of the families and your heart goes out to them. But, these people too in this town really just need some peace of mind, I think, and in figuring out what's happening.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think I'm going to go drive by just because everybody's messaging me.
Yeah.
It's probably nothing, but I'll go drive by. But thank you everybody for watching tonight.
Sorry about that. Yeah, they totally take up my internet, especially when I cut off all of the TV and went straight to just internet and streaming. Because once they were old enough, my TV got hijacked and I couldn't watch my normal, which was just ear noise. And so I have it set up to all streaming, like Disney Plus, Peacock, all that stuff. Darn kids, they take our TV away. I'm okay with that. But yeah, I definitely want to go over some of the comments in the chat. Sorry about the background noise. Minions is playing. And I kind of want to get a feel for what your thoughts are. When we were talking about watching body language in JLR's last videos, I was thinking about JLR's video and when he said alpha male. Well, I'm not too sure on the nationality of Kaylee's father. Does anybody know? Is he Latino? Is he white? He sounds like he could have a Spanish accent, but I'm thinking more of the version of alpha as in machismo, or alpha, like get the huevones or the huevos, get the balls and do it. Don't make me do it. But that's just me being in a predominant Latino culture, form of speaking. And his choice of words, I think, were the best that would come, not towards necessarily the frat, but it very well could be. Because a lot of things he does say, I think, are kind of within the gray line of him speaking, because he can't say too much and he can't say too little because it's his baby girl, right? I'm kind of curious as to what you guys were mentioning earlier. He wouldn't have to go upstairs. What are your thoughts on that? What do you think about the killer wouldn't have to go upstairs? In my opinion, the killer wouldn't have to go upstairs unless he said the entrance would be on the top floor. So do I, Linda. Nothing would shut me up. They would probably have to lock me up and throw away the key for me to shut up if it was one of my kids. And that's the honest truth. Unless he knew of a breaking and enter within the home. And also, when we go over Xana's dad opening or fixing the locks the weekend prior, I just got the immediate thought that they've already had that suspicion or feeling that somebody was in there. They noticed little things, little intricacies that were moved or changed, or the lock's not working right. Like somebody fiddled with it. I honestly believe, and when if you listen to, I cannot think of his name right now. He's a criminal profiler, and he basically said, you make a board and drill in a hole, right? You start with the basic lock, and then you add the other locks, and you add the other locks. And so you have a board full of locks, and you learn how to manipulate, almost like a locksmith. And you learn how to manipulate and break into those locks. And that definitely caught my attention, to where no lock can be not broken into, where it could be an OCD complex, which I do see with this person, and it would affect the same aspect. Doesn't matter if the locks were changed or not at this point. I do feel as though and I'm going to relate it back to when I was a child. The gentleman was sitting in front on the lawn chair in our backyard in front of the two windows. And mind you, it was Michigan. So the houses are slightly raised with a basement and large two back windows, kind of like where their grill is, and that seat, right? Well, what Chris McDonough would refer to as a seat. And our parakeet was right in front of it. The gentleman that intended to come into the house slit the screen open with a knife, right? And just sat there because the bird was being too loud. The bird was keeping him from entering the home. Oddly enough, little did we know, our phones were already bugged. We already had cameras. The house was bugged. Everything. And we also were in the process of selling our home. So if you think of this as being a party house, you can still relate it to having like an open house, or even if we reference John Bonet with showing off all of the fancy Christmas decorations. And if you understand where I'm headed with this, you can already case the area and get a better idea. But when it comes to tracing steps in OCD, I'm getting a lot of OCD when it comes to, he might not have been invited in, but the person definitely did track where and methodically his plan of how he was going to do it. And I agree, Donna. I believe that they have a lot more info, but if you did anybody watch Chris McDonough's The Interview Room last night? He mentioned that it's kind of like a game of chess, right? Where they will say certain things to start to trigger or piss them off, because internally that killer is gloating and saying, they cannot catch me, they cannot see this. And in hindsight, they started to say, well, this person was completely sloppy. This person messed up, tried to point out all the fallacies of, wait, let's do reverse psychology. And say some things that don't boost the killer's ego, right? And in my opinion, that's also why they're keeping things close to the vest, is they want to play it appropriately. And I also think that's partially why the police and the DA are kind of going back and forth on, wait, no, the house was targeted. Wait, no, a person was targeted. Because they're not speaking. There's not fluid talk between the three departments, between the FBI, local LE, and also the DA, right? That's just my opinion. Because certain profilers or certain departments have more experience than the others, but they don't necessarily communicate because they also within departments don't know who to trust in the counter departments at the same time sometimes, right? And or they're not as acknowledged as when, like FBI, you do this every day, all day. This is what you specialize in, right? The local LE does not. A DA in a small town does not. But going back to when they tried to kidnap me, there was lawn chairs, and the guy was just sitting there smoking cigarettes on the lawn chair, waiting to get into the house. They already knew where they were going, when they were going. And my dad chased him out with a shotgun because he woke up in the middle of the night to smoke a cigarette in the living room. Stood up and saw the guy just standing there on the lawn chair face to face. Right? Many years we had to move away, unknown and confident. Yeah, they are on gag orders from what I heard. And it wouldn't surprise me. When we were going over the coyote killings and saying that it was a dare by a sorority, a frat, I honestly think that it could be something connected, but not, because this is definitely Greek row targeted. So who's to say it could have been a rival, like a rival frat or sorority, and it just never left. And instead, they're playing off their cards of their dares, using it as a scapegoat. That's just one possible thought that I've thought about, It was scary, Gigi. It definitely was scary. And I was about 4 or 5 years old and finally moved away by the time I was 7. So it was to the point of where the state DA, told my mom to not go anywhere alone. And she said, well, I'm always with my family. I'm never alone. The DA said, I'm not talking about that type of an alone. It was where we actually needed security. Okay. So when you're stuck in situations and on the criminal aspect, and I think that's why I always got internally interested in the criminal psychology and the profiling, because you can kind of see it with a sore thumb when you're exposed to this kind of environment or certain people at a young age, such as politics, good old boys, I was raised around a lot of it. All of my mom's uncles who are 6'6" and up, 6'6" to 6'8", were all manic, multi-personality, bipolar. So there's an aspect where they were all using some type of inhibitors, but you never knew what you were going to get, right? So it always makes me, Chris McDonough made up a good point. Always watch your surroundings, right? Your sense of awareness of your surroundings is a big one. And I always let my daughter, I always tell her and always emphasize to her, be aware of your surroundings. She's 11 going on 12. Even yesterday, she was taking the dog out and she was like, Mom, there's a guy walking back and forth and he kept looking at me. And I'm like, well, at least you had your dog, because we have a 100-pound bulldog that doesn't like anybody but the family. He will straight up attack anybody that's not family. After my cancer, he got super protective with the cancer and twins. Good morning, Erie, Pennsylvania. Welcome. I love seeing where everybody's from. I'm an avid, I'm a mountain girl, but I love the North. I love the North. And everybody, I live where everybody vacations, but I absolutely hate it here. Good morning from Northern North Carolina. Welcome. Welcome, Joan. Welcome. I love North Carolina. To me, it doesn't matter if or who was targeted. 4 innocent people were brutally killed, and it could possibly happen again. Exactly, Donna. And I think that's why they're playing their chess cards, chess game, because if you think about it, the killer is gloating in his work. You got to think of it as an artist or even a chef, because I was a chef. I started off as a cook, right? I don't necessarily, I know I went over the knives and the 4chan and the synchronicities in my one video, if you saw it, but I necessarily don't concentrate on how the cuts were made, being that I can sharpen a knife and I can sharpen a knife real well, being raised in the kitchen and being raised around hunters, right? It doesn't matter what kind of cut it could have possibly been, pending how sharp that knife was, and it wouldn't put it past that knife was super sharp. Now, the psyche of this killer, I honestly believe that he will target again. He will. It's a game for him. It's a mental stimulation. Now, when I talked about socially and awkward when it comes to doctor or engineering brains, where they're socially awkward, right? But if you think about it, a lot of kids who are high functioning spectrum or high functioning, they're insanely brilliant, right? If they don't get enough stimulation, those are in those classrooms. So when you've got 40 kids in the classroom, that's why they always try to fight for more one-on-one and not the classes being so clustered. One-on-one, so it could be more kid appropriate per student instead of kids getting left out. So if you see a kid in the class that is insanely smart but doesn't give two craps about anything, that could be because it's boring. It's not mentally stimulating. I've known physically people that I've grown up with that are insanely smart and had so much potential, but they were bored because they were stuck, not in the advanced classes, but they kind of just lost their way because it wasn't enough mental stimulation, right? And it's just fascinating to see. And that's why I always try to get 10 steps ahead with my kids, so that they're placed in the right classrooms and the right teachers and the right environment so that they can be the best functional adult possible when they get older. Yes, he was observant. He couldn't sleep. He woke up to have a cigarette. And this was early 90s. And I will say it was a subcontractor. If any of you are familiar with the water issues in Flint, this ties into a subcontractor with General Motors of who we were with. So that can kind of give you an idea of the crime organization my mom had a class action lawsuit against. So at a young age, I learned of my surroundings, to watch people, to understand people, and to also listen to what they say and what they're saying first before just jumping on and already preparing my rebuttal. That's very important when you watch people. You watch and see what they're saying and how they're saying it. Like tone and inflection, like many people say when in text, you cannot always tell what somebody is saying through a text as to opposed to in person or through their voice, because you don't have the tone and inflection. It's kind of the same scenario. Well, it's always been that way, honestly, in my opinion. It's just now with the internet and everything is so at your fingertips, it's just being exposed to another level. A lot of people that weren't exposed to it, or the naivety of Gigi for life you are. Do you know the Dirty D's? Grand Trunk. The famous depot. Let me know. It definitely, like, even the town that I'm from, even though that happened to me, 90% of the town still leaves their doors unlocked, you know? And it's a lot of the rural areas that don't have doorbell cameras, locks. Like, when I went back up for my biological dad's funeral, I was actually quite surprised that my brother had one of those locks that you could unlock and lock through the cell phone app, right? Otherwise, you had the code. Linda, you're Ontario, Canada, eh? I love A. I always get yelled at for saying A because being from Michigan, but I don't remember seeing that. Awesome. I am so jealous. I would love to go to Ontario. I have a very dear friend who is an assistant coach for the Alouettes. And he did play for the CFL prior. Back in the day with the head coach, they were on a team, and his wife, who's one of my very dear friends, was a cheerleader. They actually, he proposed to her on the field in front of the stadium and on the big screen. It was awesome to see, but they're very close to me. Do I think it's another student? I don't know. I really don't know if it would be a student. And that's a hard one to say. I definitely think it's somebody that they're familiar with, but not their core friend group. Durand, Gigi, I'm talking about Durand, Michigan. That small town, anything that you needed or needed to go to Flint for. Now, what are your thoughts? Do you think it is another student? For some reason, I've contemplated in my mind that it is somebody familiar, somebody that they know. Saws. What is Saws? Oh yeah, the railroaders. It's a small town, but they've got a good football team. And because I'm a product of an affair, I'm related to 90% of that damn town. When you want to talk rural, it's around 2000. So every time I go back, I'll be like, well, who is that? And they're like, that's your brother. I'm like, oh, hello. Because I didn't know I was a product of an affair until I was almost 18. So I'm the baby of 8 and don't really know any of them. Plus, my biological dad was adopted and grew up in the Flint Worley Home for Boys, which is now their orphanage there in Flint still to this day. What are your thoughts? Do you think the killer could be a student? Do you think it could be an opposing frat beef? Do you think it could be an older adult? Do you think it's a stalker? Do you think it could be all of the above? Now, I think it could be all of the above. When I referenced in my live of profiling the killer, predator versus prey, some things were alarming when Sweetie Pilo's live video she posted. There's a lot of synchronicities between 1, 2s, and 3s, right? And also in that verbiage that she read, it was 1, 2, and 3s, right? Those links that she posted, 20 minutes from Niagara Falls. Well, I'm down in Florida now, Linda. But I remember as a baby, I have one of those famous pictures of being in, what do you call it? What are those called? Barrels? Like those pictures back in the 80s where you could take a picture in the barrel like you're going to go down the falls in it. Absolutely love that. I'm from where Nick Belinda lives right now, and he is the one that tried to cross the Niagara Falls. I honestly, when it comes to the killer aspect, now that I did my cold reading on the energy, I kind of try to go with facts, right? And my profiling, because of my history and being raised around certain individuals and having certain circumstances in my life, it made me intrigued and always aware. But it definitely, there's different aspects that I toss up in my mind. Could it be somebody that was a stalker? Yes. Could it be somebody that has a fascination with killing? Yes. I also found it interesting that Chris McDonough said, do not take that dog's incident off the plate just yet. And I did. I said, mark my words, I would not be surprised, and some of you have seen it, I would not be surprised if that is related, or other animals. Which brings us to another person who is known for brutally doing that to animals. He is one on my list, right? He definitely is one that is on my list. There are a couple. I think right now that person is still there and in the front, not hiding. If you look at any of the other cases, of certain cases, that person is right there. Oh, it's okay, Joan. I understand. My twins do it all the time. They're 2. I feel as though they're hiding in plain sight. And I said this yesterday, and it almost made me think of like the chess moves that Chris was talking about, of kind of going against the ego. And it makes me think of how I referenced the killer the other day as it's that person that's in the room that you don't even notice. And this is his recognition and being noticed. I still stand firm to that. It's somebody that comes in, like, like the opposite. Somebody walks in the room, they're always saying, when, say, Aubrey walks in the room, everybody notices the minute she walks in the room. She's such a bright light. I'm thinking of this as the polar opposite. Very socially awkward and not really noticed. What's your thoughts on that? That's just my opinion and my thoughts, but that's why I feel the killer is gloating in what is going on. Now, I found it interesting in my live yesterday that somebody brought up the Gainesville murders in my live. He, too, also used a K-bar knife. I found that pretty interesting. So, do you think this person might have was fascinated with serial killers, or the thought, or how everybody kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? People are infatuated with killers, the serial killers, right? And sometimes I think that they're turned, instead of being a monster, it's highlighted in not the best fashion. Even though I'm just as guilty. I love scary movies. I love horror films. I can sit through that stuff all day long. I see an animal, forget about it. Can't even watch Lion King, right? But to a certain extent, they try to humanize these killers. Gigi, probably most definitely, in my opinion, that he was fascinated with a certain type of killer. Now, people have referenced the zodiac when it comes to the anagrams, and that's where I was getting to with the 1s, 2s, and 3s. It's November 13th, 2022, right? The house, 1122, right? 3, I'm curious at the time, because it was in the 3 o'clock time span that this happened, right? And then Sweetie Pilo's 4chan thread that she found, there was a lot of gloating with 1, 2s, and 3s, pats on the back. After the 3rd, it was just more of a boastful type of talk. But it's a fixation on the numerology factor, and it's kind of there's a lot of synchronicities between all of it with 1, 2s, and 3s, and I wouldn't put it past that was that person, especially after I went in and looked at the threads just from that day's post. I didn't even go back, of how much information, and it kind of speaks volumes if you see that video, just on the verbiage and the knowledge and the tips. It's a little eye-opening, to say the least. It makes your mind go into the thought of, interesting. It makes you kind of look at the criminal psychology a little bit different. Because on there, it could be an old vet that's just writing And on the other side, it could be somebody digesting that information and doing like what just happened. When they're talking about military combat, they're not realizing they're giving tips to an actual killer. But it's kind of one-sided on 4chan from what I've caught on. Now, when it comes to also the 1s, 2s, and 3s, it's just my brain has always been fascinated and correlated numbers with a lot of things. And a lot of people don't like to hear it, but like even since I was little, I would count like my address and check the numbers and the correlation and the numerology. And I don't know why. Certain synchronicities of certain numbers always pop out to me. Or animals. Mine in particular, a hawk. I think so. I think so, Joan. But it was more of a euphoric type of romanticized to where internally he got what he wanted then. But like I said in the profiling video, it was feeding the monster and perfecting it. And now it's just building up to perfect others and increase to what he's already playing out in his mind, right? Because in my opinion, this person has already been around and cased the area, just like somebody would when they go into a gas station or a store and rob someone. You case the area. And I learned that as a young age when I referenced my phone lines being tapped, the cameras, and then there was also cameras facing at our house. That made me super aware at 4 years old to notice those aspects. And it made me think of more of the criminal psychology and transferring it into the other end of being the victim and understanding the steps of the attacker or the predator, I would say, versus the prey, right? And it's definitely an eerie feeling, to say the least. When you think of, I want to say it's almost a mixture of multiple different killers that's fantasized, morphing into one. Because it's the numbers. And that's where I wanted to look into the anagram a little bit deeper. That was on that thread as well. Because I definitely got zodiac vibes with the Delphi. And I got many downloads of like an astrology calendar on top of a map. When it still kills me every time. Bird's eye view kills in 2. Like they methodically kill in certain areas and placements. And my eyes kind of shot open when I found out about the 3D casing of digital pictures of the crime scene, right? As soon as I heard that, I was like, the bird's eye view kills in 2 always came to me, and I was like, they case it as if law enforcement would case a property or a crime scene, right? You start from the top and you case the whole scene. Now, when they have the 3D pictures, I'm kind of curious of when they took them. Did they take them right away? Or did they take them afterwards? Because that's basically transforming them into like what you would see at Disney, or remember when it was really big with what is that movie? Or even when they did Michael Jackson, like he was still performing on stage, right? I can't think of the word. If you can think of the word, let me know. It made me think of that. Kind of, yeah. Like, if you think about this, 11, 13, 22, right? And then you think of the address 11, 22, right? Now, when you think of the correlations, it's different when you look at them and they're in your face, as to opposed to somebody saying it. And then also the 3 is significant to me because the 13th, but also what time was the murder? 3, I'm curious at what's after that. That's just my thoughts. And there were 6 people in the house. Was the possible, right? The bottom floor, from what I understand, is completely soundproof, and it's against that mountain. So anything that goes on upstairs, you cannot hear. So, and from what I understand, and if they never went downstairs, and that was the main entrance to the home, was the first floor. There's another synchronicity. It was floors 2 and 3, right? Not 1. But the first floor was the main entrance. The second, but if you're casing the house from the back, you don't think about that part. You think as though that might be the living and dining area, or just the entrance and garage, not necessarily rooms. When you look in, you would think the rooms are the second and third floors. If you have not been farther than what your target or idea was. Could this killer have not known that the rooms below were done, or do you think he had enough and was done after the 4? Or he got to his target and then was good to go? I think it could be a mixture. There's no one simple answer when it comes to this. And sometimes it makes you question their thought process, which gets me as well. Their thought process intrigues me to where it's like, why wasn't the first floor targeted or hit? Yes, hologram. Thank you. Thank you, Joan. I couldn't think of the word. The 3D pictures that they take from the crime scene will basically become like a hologram for them back at the lab. And then they can process all of it like a 3D hologram. Like when you have your, what are those called? They use them for Xbox. It's too early. I don't have enough caffeine in me. My daughter's been asking for one. A virtual reality headset where it feels like you're still inside of wherever you're at. This is basically another sense where you can use it on your computer or also step inside the crime scene as if you were still in there and it was still fresh. You can still investigate without touching anything or seeing, like, disturbing anything. It's physically there for your eyes to see, if that makes sense, which not everybody has, but the FBI does have access to that. So as soon as I heard that they did that, I was like, hell yes, because that gives you more time. Because now, before, they always said the first 48 hours is the most important after the notice of the incident, right? But when you're coming to a situation like this and there's too much in one area, this is very beneficial, because when you're trying to go in and case a scene and too many hands in the pot, checking things, taking pictures, doing this, doing that, sometimes little things like the glove in the back get skipped over, right? And this is a sense of where you can constantly cross your T's and dot your I's back at the lab and check everything again without having the people in your way or certain people. And you might find something that you didn't necessarily see going in the first time, kind of like when we listen, or hindsight is 2020, right? Let me bring up certain things that, like, certain cases in the past, we didn't realize what they were saying in their words until hindsight's 2020. It's the same kind of sense as recasing the scene with the 3D aspect. What are your thoughts on the synchronicities between the 1s, 2s, and 3s? What I've mentioned in the past, what got me starting to look into the 1s, 2s, and 3s was, I was like, well, it was November 13th, 2022. There's 2 11s. There's 3 2s, 1 3. And then, for some reason, 3 was intriguing my mind. And that's when I was pulling out of my daughter's daycare and seeing the Trinity construction. And I was like, well, I need to look into this. And that's where I started looking into it, if you've missed my explanation on that. And finding out a lot of, I was trying to find out the significance of November 13th, or the significance or correlation with certain fascination of killers, whether it be November or the 13th. And I'd recommend do your own research, but there is a lot of things to be found regarding that date and murders and or mass attacks. So that's where I deep dive into the psyche, and I'm very intrigued by the psychological factor. Is I go from my cold readings, but then I also try to go from facts and personal experiences. I have been stalked. There was even a time where I had to get into the taxi that was on the corner in front of the club, leaving work, and going 2 blocks down and turning a corner just to get out of the taxi and get back and run up the alley and go where I was going, just to get away from the stalker. I've had them say, hey, I'm outside. I've had them try to run me off the road. I've had quite a few. And I understand the fear, the nervousness, and always feeling like you have to watch your back. It is horrifying. And let me tell you, my first real boyfriend growing up, right? I finally had my first apartment. I was young. We just reopened a restaurant corporately. And a bunch of us from the restaurant and all the corporate trainers wanted to go out and party. So I told my boyfriend at the time that I was going to go out with everybody from work. He's like, all right, cool. Little did I know he was waiting for me outside, freaking out. I'll be right back. Hold on, folks. Okay, sorry about that. And I was like, I didn't realize it until I was already in the car. He gets out of the car, walks up to me. I put my window down, stupidly enough. He was less than happy and super jealous and raging at this point that I was going to go out with a group of friends to celebrate and say thank you to all of the corporate trainers and all of the CEOs and the higher ups of this restaurant chain, as I was a cook at that point. Well, I was like, I'm going to go. You know, I was not going to not go. You already said I was going to go. I already told everybody I was on my way. And at this point, I had no ill intentions or to even cheat. I was still naive and young. Even though naive in the fact of relationships. So what he did was grabbed his hand around my seatbelt, grabbed it and wrapped it. Tried to hold me from driving off. Well, instead, I slammed the gas and he went flying off the car. I was kind of shell-shocked. I stopped. I'm like, are you okay? And he went to run back after me. And that's when I just got in the car and bolted. He followed me to that club. And then he followed me afterwards until my dad could pick me up. And I was scared to go back home. The only reason why I felt safe enough was because I was on the second floor, but still didn't feel safe enough. And that's just one incident of this person stalking me. There's been times of where he has come into, if I was even with a male friend and I haven't been with him for years, he would try to go after them. And there I am, jumping over the back of the club or the bar and running away and getting in my car and taking off when somebody else is distracting them. And that's why the grub bus hits home too. Body language speaks volumes, especially if you have been stalked or harassed. And I wouldn't necessarily take anybody off the list. Numerology and astrology is very fascinating. I love it. And it definitely incorporates itself. And many people overlook it or just think it's a bunch of BS until you notice the hidden synchronicities, right? A lot of people ignore the hidden synchronicities to that. So in my opinion, I think it could be somebody that was obsessed, stalked, fascination with killing. I still stand firm to my whole profiling on this person because it's very relatable, A. B, I've been in situations where I've been around certain people that you'd never expect they could do certain things. I have you interested? Oh Lord, which part? Many people say I should write a book, but I'm like, which part, right? So I definitely question, but I stand firm on it not being anybody in the center circle. I fully believe that. It is somebody that had an ego complex, somebody that possibly was turned down by one of them, as in, say they all have significant others or boyfriends or somebody that they're talking to, and they come up and talk to them and they're just like, turn them down, not realizing that that person might still be emotionally invested in the person that they're with when it comes to, or just not interested, you know. It could have been a form of an eye roll. It could have been something super simple that triggered something from the past. And I really need to dig in for the Clay County killer, because I really feel this one is significant in regards to the ego complex of when he specifically targeted prostitutes because he was never able to actually find somebody that would want to date him. And so his targets were prostitutes. Yeah, the numerology, there's a lot of synchronicities within this case between the 1s, 2s, and 3s. And when you go back to Sweetie Pilo, reiterated 1, 2, and 3, and then the 2 wireless cams in the back. Now I'm curious on those cams. The cameras in the back, were they of the killers? If they were wireless cameras, could they have been the killers? Like hunting trail cams, right? So did I, Linda. I was thinking about doing my own spirit box when I have time. But it's very hard for me to get the results out in a timely fashion, having 3 kids. Now that they're loud and into everything. Now, what has me questioning the 1s, 2s, and 3s, I want to rewatch it because I only got half of it, but I heard a lot of Tim, and I'm going to have to watch it again to be able to give my opinion on it because I caught halfway through. What are your thoughts on it? Has anybody else seen Mixie's spirit box session? There's been times of where it almost sounded as if a spirit or a possession and possibly the body of whoever the killer is entertaining it, kind of like how I feel with Delphi. Sometimes if there is possessions, the body does entertain it, the person does entertain it, and it gives them mental acknowledgement, stimulation, and it plays. So 1 minute, it's very hard because also the Amityville horror, the murders, was on November 13th as well. Let me see if I can find any of the others since I'm here. Let me take a look. Now, also in 2015 was the attacks in Paris. Oh, I didn't even realize this, y'all. You know the address of the Amity house? 112. The Black Widow was also on the 13th of November. And then I also ran into some stuff with correlations with Princess Diana. Much has been made of the significance of the 13th pillar by investigators of occult signatures and killings involving the global elite as hers. There's also the one that was most recent, where it was alleged to kill a 36-year-old woman as a part of a satanic ritual by cutting off her toes, fingers, and both ears. In 2006, it's when they held the Ritual Killings Conference. It's typically from the 16th to 18th. Charles Manson was born on November 12th. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, y'all, of what I've been digging into when it comes to the mindset, the fascination with the 1s, 2s, and 3s, and serial killers, because if you see, it does correlate with many. If you're interested, let me get back in here. Hold on one second. Now, if I'm wrong or you guys don't see this, let me know. But that is definitely something that caught my attention and has bugged me for a really long time, was the correlation of the 1s, 2s, and 3s. And then here's the Discord link again, just in case you're interested. We can continue this conversation, and I can post a lot of information in here. But the 11 common signs for a serial killer is lack of empathy, lack of remorse, impulsivity, I can never say the word, grandiosity, narcissism, superficial charm, manipulation, addictive personality. Now let's reference that OCD again. And there is a correlations between numbers and fascinations and the dialect of this person talking and who they are referencing, especially if that 4chan is that person and it was taken down. Lust of power. Lust of power, I relate it still to the person that's in the corner that does not get noticed, socially awkward, and this is his notice of power. Sensation seeking. Those are some, and that goes back to the stimulation. I have said, mark my words, and I still stand firm to it. This is not this person's first offense, but this could be their first offense towards humans. Maybe not. What do you think? Do you think this is that person's first offense towards humans, or has moved from animals to humans? I'm still digging into the correlation between all of the numbers, the numerology. A lot of people look at you like you're crazy, but it's the synchronicities that people tend to overlook when it is, yeah, I totally think so. Animals have been mastered, so no longer, and that's my theory of why the dog was not harmed. Beside the fact that the dog very well could have been already in his crate in the other room for the night. But I honestly believe, well, then again, I think the dog was let free. You never know. You never know. I'm still tossed on the dog, but I stand firm on the dog is no longer mentally stimulating for this person. And now it's on to the humans and to feed the monster within. So let me know, do some of your research now that I've showed you some 1s, 2s, and 3s correlations. I'm going to be doing a little bit more deep diving as well, and I will come back with more findings, that's for sure, because there's too much correlation between the verbiage, the anagram, the cameras, and it makes me think of when those satellites upside down comment was underlined twice. It makes me question as if the cameras were intentionally off, or certain things were intentionally turned off through hacking, or via, well, didn't they say the lock was not working? The number lock? See, now my brain's starting to go through the rabbit hole. Hey, Grammy H, good to see you, lovely. So now I'm really starting to think, could it have been it could have, no doubt in my mind, this person was a gamer and practiced this kill throughout their mind, in person and through memory. Almost as if you have to teach somebody who is losing their senses, whether it's eyesight or hearing, steps and memorization. Really makes me wonder how much of a technical background this person has, since there is such a big hit of tech savvy people in that town. Some things to ponder on. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming in. We've got some things to look over and study with the correlation, the tech side, the gaming side, the hacking side. It's got me intrigued. Well, I will see you guys soon. I promise that. I won't be as distant as normal. I'm still in a lot of pain, but I will still be here and still be present and still deep dive my rabbit holes with y'all and showing you some of my findings. And on that note, I hope you all have a beautiful and blessed day. God bless you all. Stay safe, stay smart, stay aware. If you see something, say something. And also, don't let that stop you from being somebody's ripple. You can be a ripple that helps somebody, whether it's opening a door or putting a smile on your face to them. Your ripple matters no matter which way you do it, as long as it's with good faith and intentions. Have a beautiful day, y'all.